So as we our last segment here for our opening keynote, we have Andy here from GE speaking, and Andy actually owns all the digital marketing, all the agency relationships, and has some really great stuff to share with GE. If you don't know, they're the pioneers and the I'd say probably one of the best Fortune 500 companies leading this customer first revolution. To join Andy is David Kidder. David Kidder is a best-selling author. He's an incredible entrepreneur. He's a good friend of mine and just an amazing guy. Thank you, guys. We'd love to have you up on stage. Thanks, Andy.
I needed some. I need to go to Nike ID and get some of those shoes, Seth.
I know.
They're great. And I got a headband too. I hope you all have your headbands. These are very important to wear today. We should put these on and go right in. So Andy, you are a big deal. We've known each other for a long time. You sort of like the master of all.
The hidden puppet master.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And this is going to be one big lightning round. I got analog, I got digital questions prepared, the whole thing. So GE's going through probably maybe it's sort of its ugly teenage years of a transition from a industrial to bank to a software company.
Yeah.
And it's an incredible journey. You've been part of there from the beginning. But it's changing the story, the soul, the values, the whole thing. And so I'd love to just hear a little bit about that experience of going from something that was a 160-year-old story to something that's re-recognized.
Yeah, I mean, look, we were this ugly conglomerate and a powerful one. I joined 6.5 years ago, as you know, and it's been a fascinating journey. You know, when I joined, we had capital, NBC, appliances, power, energy. It made no sense. It was just everything all thrown together. And it's been this incredible transition to say, what does a company of the future look like? When you're 125 years old, you could look back and say, hey, we were really good,
right.
But you got to move forward. You got to be thinking about what's next. And about 3-4 years ago, we started this journey to figure out what the industrial internet would be and how do you become an industrial powerhouse, which we were, with jet engines and turbines and healthcare, and overlay that with software. And we looked at it and we said, oh my God, without even knowing, we were the 13th largest software company in the world.
Yeah.
So start there and then build out. And it's been this journey, and we are in our teenage years. We've finally gotten a hold of it a little bit with an operating system, with an entire stand-up business called GE Digital. We've shed capital, we've shed NBC, and we're focused, and we're positioned to sort of bridge that gap into this next revolution, this industrial revolution of productivity, advanced analytics driving everything. I mean, if you think about it, you can make a really efficient turbine. An efficient turbine, just so you know, runs at about 60% efficiency. That's not very efficient. You add data and analytics onto that, and you start to add some of the systems we've been talking about. Now you can. The goal is 80%. I mean, that's a huge jump. And we always the secret is you talk about 1%. 1% efficiency is billions of dollars worth of efficiency and growth. That's incredible. Yeah. So that's been the transition.
So Jeff has been public in this, but inside, and now having spent a little time with him, he always talks about to get a company to change, you have to sort of start with the head, change the heart, and ultimately the wallet, right?
Yeah.
You always pay what you get for it. So talk about maybe, there's a lot of companies going through digital transformation here. They make things, but now they have to speak to things in a digital way. Like, talk about the sort of head, heart, and wallet part of the journey, and it's changing the talent as well.
It's changing the talent for sure. It's changing how we think about everything we do, how we communicate to our customers, how we communicate to investors, how we communicate to audiences. You start with the head, and the perception is, if I asked any of you, what is GE? Most of you go light bulbs and appliances. You don't think about the industrial machinery. We were already thinking about the industrial machinery, and now we got to get you thinking about that we're a digital company, which is the last thing you'd think about GE about. So that's the head. The heart is the hardest thing in my mind, and it's what I'm responsible for, and it's changing the feeling you get from GE. GE is a B2B brand. It's a B2B company, first and foremost. But the secret is we never consider ourselves that.
Is this why you suck at Google searches?
It is why we suck at Google search. It's why we suck at all search. Because who really, in your daily life, you don't think about, I promise you none of you think about GE. It never crosses your mind. You think about Google, you think about Amazon, you think about Apple. GE's the farthest thing from your mind. I will tell you, every one of you, GE impacts your day more and more on a daily basis than any of those companies. Yeah. You can't turn the lights on in this auditorium without us. You couldn't have flown here without us. okay? That's how integral we are, and that's the hard part. We need to be business to human, and that's something we've strived for so long. And then the wallet, that's like the end of the journey. That's the bottom of the funnel, both from customers, from investors, from how we spend. I mean, we don't show up in search unless you type in GE.
And a very long keyword string.
And a really long keyword string, because it's something we need to think more about as we become this software company, as we become a digital company, as we become more connected, as we get out of our core industrials and go into other businesses that might be influenced by this software solution.
So Beth, who's now the vice chair, has been a friend for the last decade, and in a lot of ways is sort of the co-founder of my latest company the last 5 years. And we've been sleeves rolled up with you and Linda and Eric Reese and the whole team working on the heart part and a little bit of the head part. And you guys tell that story really well. We brought some content that sort of signals on like, all right, this is the type of people we're looking for, and how they're explaining the work that they're doing. When you realize that GE is in the fabric of everything that we do, and it's physical, but now it's turning digital. So maybe we can, as we go through this, you can kind of share a little of those stories about how you're sort of expressing this marketplace.
I'll set up the first one, and I'll go. So in changing perception, first of all, changing perception is really hard on any company. When you're 124 years old and you're an industrial company, it's really hard to tell the world you're digital. So one of the challenges was you have to really capture something different. So in this first one we're going to roll called Hammer, we wanted to change perception about what people thought and how people perceive GE and what it means. So can we play that one?
Proud of you, son. GE, manufacturer. Well, that's why I dug this out for you. It's your Grandpappys Hammer, and he would have wanted you to have it.
It meant a lot to him. Yes, GE makes powerful machines, but I'll be writing the code that will allow those machines to share information with each other. I'll be changing the way the world...
You can't pick it up, can you? Go ahead. You can't lift the hammer.
It's okay, though. You're going to change the world.
So, I mean, that was our first shot across the bow of we're changing who we are. We are a company that does impact the world and change the world, but the perception was we're dirty hands, wrenches, sledgehammers. What in God's name are we doing in the digital space? And that was sort of our first entry into changing perception and changing the mindset. And we'll just run through these because I think they're fun to give you a sense of where we are. Yeah. This next one is about same character. He has a job at GE and it's great, but he's sort of like, wait a minute, he's doing something of value versus what's going on in the world. And I'm not offending anyone by doing this, but there's sort of this misperception that a lot of what's going on in digital and Silicon Valley is frivolous. So can we play Zazzy's?
So what's your news?
I got a job. I'll be programming at GE.
Oh, I got a job too.
Zazzy's.
The app where you put fruit hats on animals. I love that.
Guys, I'll be writing code that helps machines communicate.
That's just Zazzy to you.
Look at it. Oh.
I can do dogs, hamsters, guinea pigs, you name it.
I'm gonna transform the way the world works.
I programmed that hat, and I can do cassava melons.
I'll be helping turbines power cities.
I put a turbine on a cat.
I can make hospitals run more efficiently.
This isn't a competition.
So it was really, look, these are playing into what people were feeling, but also giving us a personality, playing into that human element that's so important. And it had a big change in how people thought about GE, and it had a big impact for us. So much so, we had to remind people that we actually made stuff. We made stuff that was big and impressive. So we followed this effort up with another effort with a woman who works at one of our plants. So can we play the last one?
We've just been hearing so much about how you're a digital company, yet here you are, building a jet engine.
Well, GE is digital and industrial.
Like peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah.
Ham and cheese. Mm-hmm. Cops and robbers.
Yeah.
Nachos and karate.
Not that one so much. But the rest were really good.
Socks and shoes.
Okay, Ricky.
So it was sort of like, hey, don't forget what we do is big and important, and when you build jet engines, you have to remind people of that these things are powerful, and it has been this evolution and this change, and prior to this, it was all emotion-based, and we want comedy because it's hard to poke fun at yourself. You have to have some, You have to have some guts to do it. You got to have some balls to do it.
Let's talk about the digital side of this.
Yeah.
So these are obviously stories, and they're wonderful stories. I love them because
great.
they are signaling over a period of time. Remember, we see them in a consolidated way, but there's a lot of thinking about how you communicate and the cadence of that, the story, and that expresses a lot of the stuff on platforms. So how do you think about the platforms that sort of GE is telling the story into, and how are you managing? I mean, you oversee and own a tremendous amount of money being spent on TV, in social, in search, these places. How do you bring those together, and how do you think about platforms and expressing the cadence of the story?
Yeah, it's the biggest challenge we deal with every day.
Yeah.
First of all, there's new platforms every day. You have to digest and understand and how they're being used, different audiences. And it's why we're starting to think about, how do you think about audience first versus content first? And I think it's the biggest challenge. So, TV, it's a big broad-based medium. It's meant to do what it's meant to do. It's fun, it's entertainment, it's great. It's not engagement. And I think that's something people forget. TV is sit back, relax, and enjoy. Social isn't as social as everyone says. It's paid media, first and foremost. But it allows for conversation to happen more around content. And social, I think the big misperception is a lot of people say, hey, you got to take this, right? Throw it on social. No, don't ever do that, because that's not meant for that. The audience on social wants something, probably in a 5-second bite. Give them some content, give them some equity, give them something that they can share that makes them feel smart. Then you get beyond that, and you get to other platforms you can really engage in. We played around with podcasting, and we're very successful with podcasting with science fiction and storytelling. And it is about how are we going to engage an audience. And we created a podcast called The Message. If you haven't listened to it, please download it. It's really good. It hit #1 on the podcast charts. It had very little to do with GE, but it was brought to you by GE. And it created that sort of ownership
Were your customers there? Did you find them aggregate,
We didn't find customers. We found recruits. We found people who were generally interested, possible young investors.
Yeah.
So when we think about audience segmentation, we think about platforms as well.
Yeah.
So we think about, where is the young investor living, who's going to be the future possible big owner of GE? Where are future recruits and employees living who will come work? You have 300,000 employees. You got to recruit them. You got to turn over your staff.
Yeah.
And then you think about GE's it's one of the largest held stocks in the world. So you got to figure out, how are we touching
It's
everyone's
the 8th
business?
biggest company in the world. I think it has the GDP is larger than South Africa.
Yeah.
It's like running a country. It's
It
one
is
thing,
running
having
a
spent time now,
medium-sized country.
It is incredible how complex it is. Not only to get the country to do what you want, which we know is very hard to do, clearly, now-ish, but also getting into a place where you actually get people to believe something and your customers to believe you.
So here's a good example of how hard that is. So every quarter we report earnings.
Yeah.
Every one of our main businesses could report earnings on their own as a top 50 company in the world.
Yeah.
Okay, so combined, we're doing that, and it's how we get there. But I think the challenge is, how do you reach the customers? How do you reach the end user who's really buying the stuff? Because it's easy to send an email and say, hey, buy a jet engine.
Yep.
That's not how
Is
it's
that
done.
how they're sold? I didn't know that.
I mean, there's a little bit,
I thought you had to go,
You might have to
own
sell
a
a little
country
bit.
and
You have to own an
send an
airline.
ambassador. Yeah,
it's hard. It's hard. But you have to figure out, how are you staying constant? Because the one sale of the jet engine is good, but the money's made on the back end as services and endless updates to data and software. And that's where this storytelling comes in and merges those two together, so that when you have that face-to-face communication, they see the breadth and scope of what GE's doing across the board.
Yeah.
And look, people are people. I say this all the time. The guy who's the CEO of a company is watching Sunday Night Football and listening to podcasts. So I don't know where I'm going to intercept him. I'm definitely not only talking to him when he's in his office with his computer on, thinking about his company. Because at the same time, he's probably going on ESPN.com as well and checking out the latest scores. Mm-hmm. You have to think about everyone as a person, not as their title.
Yeah. I've only worked in small companies, 4 startups the last 20 years. And when you realize how most large Fortune 100 companies are, it's like moving a super tanker, right? You move a single degree, it changes. Yeah, that's a small example of that.
It's like plate tectonics.
Yeah, it's incredible. But you still have to be in the storytelling business. Mm-hmm. It goes back to the sort of hearts and minds and wallets of people. And it's an internal story, it's an external story, it's a future story, and the talent, as you're showing. How do you think about not only your own careers as changing, going from making things to sort of digitizing things.
Sure.
And you've been a central part of leading that. How is the role of a digital officer, a creative director, a CMO today changing? But what do you look at like 4 or 5 years, 10 years in the duty to lead the company inside and out?
So I think about 2 ways. One, storytelling will never go away. I think we're human beings. We love stories. We've loved stories since the beginning of time. How those stories are delivered are going to endlessly change. I think as we were thinking much more on the content first side, on the, what do we feel good about? Let's just tell the world about that. It's sort of gut. The paradigm shifting where we have to understand audiences much better. Time is finite. There's not 25 hours in the day, there's 24, and there's many more touch points. So as that sort of evolution of a CMO, a CDO, they need to think about how am I going to tell that story and be really relevant moving forward. So I better know, David, what you like, what interests you. Are you really ever going to look at TV? Are you only on Netflix? Are you only thinking about where my Facebook feed is at, where my LinkedIn, Zazzies? Like, what's interesting to you?
Yeah.
Do you want to put melons on cats?
I definitely want to.
So as that shifts, understanding that before anything goes into market, before you think about any ideas, and then how does your story as a company fit into your desires as a person?
So you saw, just to go into the business of agencies. So for example, there's a lot of people who have agencies here. We have platforms of the Conductors of the world. You saw one of our partners is, ironically, David Taylor, P&G, who's a wonderful guy, by the way, and Mark Pritchard. And Mark Pritchard is changing the way the accountability and how they buy services from agencies, which is, quite frankly, going to change the entire business.
Yeah.
The way P&G goes,
the world goes.
In the same way, the way GE goes, the world goes there. So how is your relationship changing with the agency world? How do you think about it? You have 4 big ones. Are you going to go to more, fewer? What's the accountability? What's the contract looking like? How are you, living this new sort of like accountability framework as a marketer?
So,
or maybe not.
No, we are. We're polygamous. We like to play with everyone. I think the way things change in the futures is how P&G goes. It's how the telcos go. And they are going to determine what happens. And I will say, there's been a push, what I would say over the past 4 or 5 years, to diversify, to get out and spread across multiple agencies, multiple people, best minds, wherever they come from, who cares?
Yep.
What I've seen probably over the past year and a half is more consolidation, more focus. When you think about a company like GE, we're complex. We're so hard to understand. Ideas, can, quote, come from anywhere, but are they good ideas? Are they great ideas? Are they smart ideas, and do they reflect true business goals
so
that you have
pick?
established?
What's your selection lenses? Like, how do you know what a great idea is? How do you view that? How do you pick?
So it's very basic. Is it on strategy? Does it meet a desired goal of what the company is achieving? So in our case, is it telling our digital story? Is it reaching customers and the audience we define for that very finitely in the best way possible? Or is it big and broad that it's making people feel, and when I say people, the 300,000 that work at GE, making them feel so proud that every day they go to work, they say, damn it, I work for GE and it's the best fucking company in the world. And that's, as easy as that sounds, it's not. Because a lot of people walk in the door and say, oh, I know GE, they're easy. They're really hard. I would say that about P&G too. I know laundry detergent. You don't know laundry detergent because you don't know it like the people at P&G. And that's where I think the focus is coming within the agency world. I think you'll have specialty groups. And then at the same time, you'll have this sort of core 3 to 4 agencies that are not, this is the one change I will see in the future. They are not part of the agency anymore. They work at an agency, but really work at the client.
Yeah.
And that's the fundamental shift that's got to keep on happening. What I love about agencies is you have great ideas and great people, great creatives, working on multiple pieces of business. So they get inspiration from other things. But as stuff gets harder and harder and more focused, they need to spend more time in the client's world while bringing in their expertise. I think bringing it in-house, you won't get the best talent.
Yeah.
But you'll get the best talent if you merge those 2 groups together.
You, as a culture, with you and Lynn and Beth and others, you're one of the most experimental companies of any of our partners. I mean, we work with some pretty fabulous companies at the top: Nike, P&G, GE, obviously, InBev, others. No one compares to GE's experimentation. You guys will do things that are literally crazy.
Yes.
And quick, fast, down and dirty, try it, dump it if it works. Like, I'll do anything once. If it works, you'll translate it back to the company. So I'm going to harass you a little bit here.
Ahead.
So while you have this super high volume, experimental culture, you still can't get SEO right. Like,
Nope.
so like, for example, like there's a big basic fundamental, like we can like lift weights sort of things, and yet we can all do these super gymnastical things over here. Like, how do you reconcile amazing experimental culture and talk about that, but also with the fundamentals? And maybe that matters, or maybe it doesn't for your customers. Yeah.
It does matter.
Yeah.
Let me start with the experimental stuff.
It's a paradox.
It's a total paradox, and it doesn't work right now, and it's something we need to work on.
Yeah.
I'll start with the experimental stuff, and I encourage anyone to do this. It's sort of back to the example we saw in P&G and the search thing. So many people are afraid to fail. I will say one thing I've had with Beth so well and Jeff, we're not afraid to fail.
Yeah.
And I think most times in corporate culture, if I fail, I'm going to lose my job. Most people can spin a failure into success. We've done that very well over the years. But what I would say is if you don't take that risk, and we've taken so many risks, we've done some stupid stuff. I'll be the first one to say I've done some dumbass things. But I probably have an 85 to 90% success rate on those things. So I have that luxury of failure. Take a risk, take a chance, who cares? Yep. The stuff we do that's highly experimental is very low cost. So there's no risk reward. And then one of the things we do is we incorporate, the way GE structures, you have corporate and then we have the businesses, we incubate it, we develop it, we sort of coddle it, and then we scale it and send it out. And when something's a success, then we can scale it and send it out. So we will be the first to play on any social platform. Right or wrong, we'll test it out. And if it works, then we'll push and go crazy on it. If it doesn't work, no one knew. Who cares? The other side of it, which is the blocking and tackling stuff we don't do, but we just don't do it. We're not good at it because we don't look at it as, is it doing something right away that's going to achieve grander success? Now, SEO and stuff like that, it's probably more relevant on the business level. And when I say the business level, it's GE Aviation and Power, where they have direct connects with customers, where they're talking about specific products. At corporate and the work that we do, we're talking about the vision of the company. Mm-hmm. Vision's not something you search for. Vision's not something that's going to pop up there.
Do you think of your job as to get the best tools into the business?
Yeah.
I mean, the last couple of years, we've been talking a lot about this with you and Linda, which is, we experiment really fast, we get things that work, and then we give them as a tool set, a platform to the businesses. Is that unique to GE? Do most companies work that way?
I think it's somewhat unique. Yeah. It's somewhat unique because a lot of companies, so two things happen. I do the tools piece and then I do the vision piece. So the vision is always going to stay at the corporate level because that's where you set it up. A lot of companies, and I'll use P&G as a great example because they're a brilliant company, but they are a house of brands. Mm-hmm. So the brands control what they're going to do. Tide controls what they're going to do. Charmin controls what they're going to do. All those different brands control their storylines. GE is a branded house. Corporate controls the story for the entire company. Down the funnel, they are doing direct, it is literally one-on-one conversations on sales. They won't do the marketing side of it. Other than search, other than sort of the blocking and tackling that gets them to the next level. So it's a different model.
So a lot of people in the audience have startups or big companies that have broad range. How does someone sell to you? I'm just curious, like how do you penetrate new things into a big company? Like what's the psyche of getting into the top and going in and commercializing a new idea where you have a high experimental culture? Does it come through your network? Does it come through direct? Like, what's your view of, testing things?
Here's the inside secret to GE.
Right.
Is that if you basically email 3 people, it gets in. Myself, Linda, or Beth.
Yeah.
And I say that jokingly in that we're naturally inclined, as you know,
huge curiosity,
just to listen and try. And this goes back to the never fail. Like, if it comes up through the businesses, it will never make it.
Yeah.
And I say that because they will experiment in MR in healthcare, and it will live in MR in healthcare and never even get to healthcare headquarters. So it really is a push down world at GE, and
Do you think it's unique to you, or is that, you think when you look at your sort of peer group across a lot of sectors?
I think it's common.
Yeah.
I think it's common in our peer group. I think it's common in a lot of corporations and a lot of businesses that, look, we're all looking for the next new thing as much as you guys are, as much as you are, right? So where is that next new thing coming from? I trust partners. If you say, hey, Andy, meet with someone, I'm going to meet with them more than just a cold one. What I will say, and this is really important, I get a lot that no one even realizes what I do.
Yeah.
And
What do you do?
But I don't
I know
even know
you
what
like
I do.
run all the money, but like, what do you? Just teasing you.
I wish I ran
I
all
do
the
know
money,
actually you do, but yes.
But no, so like I run the strategy, I run the content, I run the media, and I run the experiential, and I run the brand for GE. What does that mean? Well, that's pretty basic if you break it down and you look at my history of work.
Yeah.
The cold emails that come in and say, hey, I want to do X, Y, and Z with you, and I'm like, delete. You didn't even think about who you're emailing. You're just trying to get in the door.
Yeah, or the most recent conversation we had in my office, which was last week, which was, don't tell me like all the things I suck at, because I already know that. Or
Don't
why
tell me-
all my other partners blow, and like no one gets it, and like we're the only one who gets it. It's like, okay, well, you're 4 people, and I'm sure you're
I
smart,
love that.
but like that's hilarious.
That's my favorite one, where everyone walks in and says, look, here's why what you've been doing for your entire career sucks, and you shouldn't do it anymore. Work with me. I'm like, yeah, I don't think so. but it is the same. It is the same logic.
Yeah.
It's like, and here's the other thing I was saying, and a lot of people won't tell you this because don't come in with your baked idea.
Yeah.
Your baked idea doesn't have any value to me. Working with me works.
Yeah.
Working with someone to understand their business and adapt. If you have something prepackaged and say, hey, slap your logo on it, sorry, no dice.
In a conversation with Beth and Linda about maybe a month ago, I was trying to describe what I think GE's doing in its transformation to digital, but also a lot of our other partners, which is these large companies. This is actually any company is important to. They've traditionally made their money by making products for their customer.
Yeah.
They think about it, they go make it. There's a cycle, for the customer's like, thank you for the product that I have budgeted, right, whatever it is. But very few companies, the really elevated ones, are getting into partnership.
Yes.
They're going from for to with. And it's in that with that you invent together, and you actually can learn lots of all the psyche learning. And that drives like, diversity of thinking and gender of thinking. And to this point, this was not a leading question, which is, GE announced last week, 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago.
20,000
20,000 female
engineers, or?
well, female people in tech space. So engineers, data scientists, you name it, whatever it is.
This is unbelievably important.
Yes.
So well done. Well
Thank
done.
you.
But that moving from that for to with, I mean, they're also abandoning something. I think that I don't know if GE is super guilty of this, but I know I have partners who are, which is there's a lot of companies that take from their customers. They leverage their monopolies or their entitlement or their incumbency, and they're actually not creating value. It's a tax. And I think there's a karma around that. I think there's a value capture versus creation shift that's going on for a lot of reasons, especially because the millennial buyers coming through expect to be in creation with customers. So maybe this is a long leading question, which is like, how are you moving from for to with? And what's the results of that?
So the width is part of the future. If you're just creating for, you're dead on arrival, right? Because you don't need to buy the next widget.
Right.
You need to do it with. The with is where the digital business comes in. We've created an operating system called Predix. It doesn't matter what we say it does. It matters what the customer's value can get out of it. So if we enter a partnership, and they are partnerships with customers on Predix, on our software operating platform, what can we do together to make it work? We open it up to them, to their developers, to build apps on it. That's going to benefit them, and then we help optimize. It is strictly a partnership. It has to be a partnership. If all we're doing is saying, hey, here's the operating system we made, here's the apps we made, they will work for you, it will not revolutionize their business, and it won't make any productivity increases because they're not having any input. It's like the creative process. I don't care what anyone else thought was right. If they don't do it with me, it's not right because they don't know the inside thinking that is necessary to tell our story.
Yeah. I'll close with this. GE rewrote their values. Now called GE Beliefs.
Yeah.
I was a part of a small team with you and others to be part of that team. And having grown up in Schenectady, New York, one of the great privileges of my career to do that. And
Drive by the big sign every day.
yeah, it's amazing, right? It changes a whole company and millions of customers at the end. You know, it's a 127-year-old company, right?
25 this year.
So it has a tremendous history of like invention, like of the light bulb, to like all these other things, to the jet. Like there's amazing history, and yet it's still on this journey of trying to figure out how to keep reinventing itself.
Yep.
Where does that come from? Like there's this energy at GE that is this constant, let's blow it up and rebuild it. Let's blow it up. The nostalgia is at a market level very high, the light bulb, the train, et cetera. But its commitment to blowing itself up is actually high and often.
Every day.
It's getting back to its startup. Like, can you talk a little about that?
Yeah, so we talk about how we're a 125-year-old startup, right? Because we genuinely believe that. It goes back to our core DNA, which comes from Edison, which is he always said, he looked to what the world needs and I proceed to invent it. And every day, the people who work at GE genuinely believe that. Genuinely believe, I'm not satisfied with what I did today, I need to make tomorrow better. We have a belief, and it's not in the beliefs, but it's a mantra we have, which we really do look to what the world needs. We want to make the world work better every single day within our core verticals, with building, moving, powering, and curing. And it is something that we put on paper around 6 years ago now. And everyone genuinely believes that. Because everyone looks at what they do and they say, if I was satisfied with what I did today and didn't improve on it, then my job is over. And the world is not perfect. The world is not running efficiently. There are better ways to do it. There's better invention. We invest heavily in upstate New York. We invest heavily in R&D. $6 billion in R&D. No other company does that. Because we genuinely believe there are better improvements to be made on anything we do, and there's innovation to be had. And innovation is part of our, I mean, Edison didn't stop at the light bulb. It's what he's famous for, but he didn't stop at the light bulb. And his goal was not to make a light bulb. His goal was to enable people to read at night and electrify cities. You know, and that's sort of the mentality. And it is nostalgic, but I think if we ever look backwards, and this is how we are as a company, you know, if we look backwards, we might as well stop existing. So we're always looking forward. We're thinking about where does the next opportunity lie, and not just from a business standpoint, but from a world-changing standpoint.
It's an amazing place, and it's amazing to interview you. We have known each other a long time, and it's you're a great storyteller, and it's great to spend time with you here. So thank you very much for stepping in and doing this. So
Absolutely,
thanks,
it's my pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.